Finance Committee is now back in session. When we took the lunch break, we were in the midst of examining EA 157, Cayman Turtle Conservation Center, Cayman Brac Facility. There any other further questions?
It's through you, Mr. Chairman. I wonder if the minister can say that this $2 million that's allocated here over the next 2 years is the total cost of this project, or are we likely to be faced with additional funds later on?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, thank the member for the question. Let me give you more than a short answer. I want to reframe where we are with the question itself. The importance of the project is the infrastructural development of Cayman Brac for a tourism product and sustainable development going along with the strategic mid-range plan for Cayman Brac and Little Cayman. I want to thank the member for his concern, his pointing out the issues with how we budgeted this, and I want to assure him that the $2 million that was put in here was derived from a structured process that the Deputy Chief Officer explained. The Deputy Chief Officer is here. He can go through with the member on a sidebar how he came up with those numbers, but we are confident that this is a number that we can work with based on where he is with the business case.
Member for Newlands.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wonder if the minister could tell us how many science-based jobs are going to be created by this project.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to the member, thank him for the question. It would be lab work, 1, and husbandry of the turtles themselves, 2, 3 jobs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 3 in total, or those are the 3 different types of jobs?
That's 3 in total?
No, that's a rough estimate. In addition to those, you need semi-skilled labor and so on.
3 that are identified with those skill sets, and then semi-skilled labor around there.
Thank you. I wonder if the minister could let us know what is being done then with regard to training and developing Caymanians, young Caymanians especially, who are interested in turtle conservation to take up those jobs in time for this facility to come online.
Again, through you, Mr. Chairman, to the member, the Turtle Farm has 107 employees with only 4 permits. The idea is to recruit and train at the Turtle Center here in Cayman and have them ready to move to Cayman Brac when it opens.
Thank you. So are we saying that especially the husbandry jobs, they don't require any sort of qualification or certification?
It's an on-the-job training program that would be done here in Cayman.
Thank you. So just trying to understand this then. So there are no scientists that are going to be employed then in the Cayman Brac facility?
the lab in Cayman Brac would demand 1 or 2, but the overlap would be that they would have also the ability to work in research in Cayman along with that.
Well, where I was going with that, Mr. Chairman, is I see a great opportunity here for us to get some young Caymanians who are interested in becoming scientists, trained and qualified, to continue the work to turtle conservation. The turtle is in our coat of arms. I don't think there's any question that there's going to be a need for this for forever, for eternity. So it would be a good positive start, and it's just a suggestion that we look to put money in the budget to educate Caymanians, train them to prepare them for those jobs. Because I'd hate to see that this becomes a exercise where the jobs are created and no Caymanians really get the benefit of it as well.
Point taken.
All those in favor of EA 157, Cayman Turtle Conservation Center, Cayman Brac Facility, for $1 million in 2020 and $1 million in 2021, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman,
Minister?
the support staff for Turtle Conservation Centers here, they only have one more line item. Since everybody kind of has their mind on this now, could we do EL 49, and then we could release them? Yeah?
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm happy to
that's okay.
take that. So the next item we'll take is on page 18, EI 49, Cayman Turtle Conservation and Education Center Limited, $4 million in 2020, $3,960,000 in 2021. Are there any questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Member from Northside?
Through you to the minister. Can you have a breakdown of the 4 million and the 3,960,000 as to what's loan payment and what is operational subsidy?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the loan amount is 0. The capital is 1 million out of the 4, and operation is 3 million. We're just looking for where it is in writing, and we get that for you.
In the meantime, Mr. Chairman, can I ask the minister if he has issued any directives in accordance with the Public Authorities Law asking the Turtle Farm Board to do something about the revenue produced by the turtle farm so that government doesn't have to subsidize the operation thereof?
The board has started on a strategic plan to have a break-even model. The ministry has issued no directive to that.
And so the board has decided to begin to develop a strategic model for break-even. Is the minister satisfied that a break-even position is adequate, given the amount of subsidy that we have to give this operation?
Through you, Chair, to Mr. Chairman, to the member, the minister and the ministry is satisfied with the performance of the Turtle Center. The Turtle Center offers the anchor tourism attraction in the area of West Bay. It hires 107 people. As you've just heard, 4 on permit, the rest are Caymanian. The Turtle Center has tremendous potential, and it also has linkages to all of the other tourism attractions in the area. So if we get that type of exposure as a tourism attraction, which is needed in the country, we believe it's value for money.
Can the minister say whether he has had any report from the board as to what benefits may be being denied from to the 103 Caymanians working there because there's no attempt to produce revenue with which to pay their benefits?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, the question is what benefit is being denied to the employees? No benefits are being denied.
So the proposal that you got from the board as to what the subsidy was needed by this board and the Turtle Center to operate has been 100% funded by government?
So through you, Mr. Chair, the subsidy is the shortfall between income and expense.
And the question is, was the shortfall as identified by the board to the ministry funded 100% by government in this budget? Or were there cuts to the request?
What was requested is what was funded.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, how much does the Turtle Farm charge for a tourist or a Caymanian to go through to visit the Turtle Farm?
Rack rate, if you visit and you're a tourist, is $45. Child is 25? A child is 25.
And how many?
A Caymanian resident is 10.
And
CI?
what is the income from? You see, I have to ask all these questions because we're looking at 2015 accounts. We don't know what's happened since that. How many people? What is the total revenue for the Turtle Farm for this 45, 25, and 12, and what else?
Mr. Chairman, if I may refer to page 334 on the ownership agreement. As you'll see on that, we have for the year 2019 forecast and the year 2020 budget and the year 21 budget. So, for example, the 2019 forecast is sale of outputs, goods, and services to others, $7,768,989. And then there are various payments itemized, personnel costs, payments to suppliers, interest paid, and the net cash flows then from operating activities is a negative $4,540,473. $4,540,473, and then cash flows are shown as well. Purchases of property, plant, and equipment, and again, I'm talking 2019. You'll see its capital is $1 million in each of the coming years. For the year shortly to end is $1,125,781, and then you'll see there an itemization of where the equity investment goes. The net cash flows, cash and cash equivalents at the end of the period, and so on. So you'll see how all of those numbers add and subtract and end up at the various results at those bottom lines. I think, Mr. Chairman, I can do no better than refer to page 334. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I have page 334. The public doesn't have it. I want to try to keep it simple for the public. Are there any other sources of income other than the 7.7 million? Excluding the government subsidy.
No, sir, I'm not seeing that on this spreadsheet.
So
I know I can, if Mr. Chairman, if I may help the member, when the member is comparing it against the financial statements, you may find a line item for revenues and a line item for other income. And other income is typically separated out there relating to lease payments for the leasehold property that we have on a lease to a tenant.
So in addition to your entrance fees of 7.7 million, you have leasehold income. How much?
Mr. Chairman, I need to clarify. The 7.768 million is a composite of incomes from admissions, from secondary revenues, which comprise food and beverage and retail merchandise sales. We have presently three outlets at the Cayman Turtle Center for food and beverage. We got one at Cayman Turtle Center for merchandise, one at Royal Watley Terminal. And it also, of course, involves the sale of turtle meat, which is a subsidized price. But nevertheless, the revenue, i.e. the payments we receive for the turtle meat, count as revenues as well.
To you, Mr. Chairman, is it safe to say that the turtle farm is losing $3 million a year?
Okay, I'm seeing, where's that? 335 or what? Because I don't have that on this. Okay, sorry. I'm looking on the page, if you look on page 335, what you're going to find is the listing of total sales of goods on this one shows as 7,567,989 for 2019 forecast. The total rentals is 201,600, and therefore the total for goods and services, it makes up the total 7,768,989. But for the sake of clarity, the first figure I gave, total sales of goods and services, comprise a mix of different revenue streams.
But the total revenue is 7.7 million.
7.768989. That's correct.
Okay. So the loss is 2.3 million a year. Because you say that out of the 4 million, 3 million is subsidy for operation. So your operation cost is 10 million. So if you're only taking in 7.7 million, you lose. My question is the turtle farm losing 2.3 million per year?
Well, I should clarify. So the figures I just gave you for 2019 forecast, but each of the years, 2020 and 2021, are itemized as well. So, for example, the net cash flows from operating activities.
Mr. Chairman, can I have 5 minutes, please?
Okay. We'll take a 5-minute break. Keep everyone, please stay in your seat.
Mr. Chairman, let's,
Ready to go, sir?
thank you.
Okay, sir, go ahead. Please proceed.
So, through you, Mr. Chairman, could I ask the member to repeat the question again?
The question was, is it fair to say that the turtle farm is losing $2.3 million in 2021?
You just had that. Right here. Yeah, that's on page 330? Is that where you're,
No, I'm just subtracting I'm just adding
yeah,
your subsidy to the 7.3 million, right? Because you say you're getting 3 million of the 4 million is
Right.
operational subsidy. So that means that your total cost is 7.3 million, is 10.7 million, and your revenue is 7.7.
so page 330
So
says
you lose
cash
$3
and
million
cash
a
equivalents
year.
at the end of the period, $2,537,000.
That's your loss for that year.
That's not the loss, that's cash and cash equivalent.
Well, I don't know what you want to call it, but if
Okay, yes,
you agree that's a loss.
yes.
Okay. So I don't recall the breakdown of the 3.960 for 2021. There wasn't any of that for capital, right? That's all subsidy.
1 million is for capital, and the rest is for subsidy.
And so that's $2 million in this budget for capital improvements to the Turtle Center. Do we have a business?
Over a 2-year period.
Yeah. Do we have, what are they doing? What's the business case for that?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to give you categories: plant and equipment, upgrades on aquatic life support system, components including filters, $225,000, saltwater pipelines, $200,000, concrete structures, $50,000, additional turtle tanks, $50,000, restaurant equipment, $50,000, total of $575,000. Buildings and grounds, water slide refurbishment 0, relocation of freezer, expansion of outlets in saltwater lagoon, $25,000, renovation of saltwater lagoon, $75,000, internal, external signage, $25,000, Cayman Street office building expansion, $125,000, turtle egg hatchery expansion, $50,000, security cameras, $10,000, vehicles, $35,000, IT hardware, $10,000, Microsoft license, $20,000, office furniture, $50,000. 2021, upgrades aquatic life support system, $225,000. Saltwater pipe, $350,000.
How much saltwater pipe put in there? Only 500?
Concrete structure, $20,000. Additional turtle tank concrete pads, $125,000. Restaurant equipment expansion saltwater lagoon, $15,000. Buildings and grounds relocation saltwater lagoon, $15,000. Signage, $20,000. Office building expansion for research conservation, $50,000. Security cameras, $10,000.
Again?
Replacement of vehicle fleet, $88,000. IT hardware, 20,000. Microsoft license, 22,000. Office furniture, 40,000.
Sir, can we just get the total by year? That's the total summer by year, please.
2 million.
Mr. Chairman.
$1 million. Each year it's $1 million.
Okay. To you, Mr. Chairman, and after investing $2 million, your strategic plan is only to improve revenue, to increase revenue by 100,000.
So, through you, Mr. Chairman, what was said was that the board had undertaken a strategic plan to break even. What I just read was a capital project list.
But, and I will envisage that the strategic plan is not yet complete, right? But you're still needing budgeting $2.9 million in operational subsidy. That's a long way from break even for 2021. Or is it going to take 2022 to draft a strategic plan and implement it?
This is what was proposed in the budget, and the statement was made that the board is now working on a strategic plan. I can only conclude to the member that the strategic plan will not have a break-even part of it until the next year after this.
Okay. Out of the, you say you charge cruise ship passengers $45.
They have a wholesale package rate that is not the same through the industry. It depends on who brings by volume.
So you offer discounts on volume. If I bring 10 people, I get a discount. If I bring 100 people, I get a greater discount. How much does the cruise ship sell that $45 tour for?
The Turtle Center has different packages that they sell, and they put a price on it. And then the cruise lines who pick up the packages take it, pay a wholesale price to Turtle Center, and then they retail it on board the vessel.
And you don't know what they retail it for?
Tell us, we can see it online.
Every line is different and seasonal.
Let me put the question in a different way. Does the ministry, the board, or management of Turtle Farm believe that based on what the cruise ships sell their tours to their passengers for, is there any room to increase this $45?
They would look at all options available to increase revenue. If that is one of them, which we're going to assume that they will look into all the different areas for revenue. So you've identified one that they would use to come to a break-even position, if that's the strategic plan.
I think so.
I wanted.
But no, the leader of the opposition got a question.
All those in favor of,
No.
okay, who else needs to? I haven't seen this.
Sorry.
Oh, the
Okay,
lights,
sorry.
the
My
lights were on.
apologies. Member for East End.
Mr. Chairman, I may not have heard this, but because I was out for a while, how much money is the turtle farm getting off each tour? And that may necessitate a average, because you said you do it based on volume.
Because the packages are mixed and they sell packages that would go to Turtle Farm, Pedro, Botanical, Hell, they would be more if they had more than Turtle Farm, Turtle Center in there. But if it was only a tour to the Turtle Center, the price average is $30.
Mr. Chairman, is the Turtle Center, Turtle Farm, whatever we want to call it, is not operated as a call center? As a cost center. Okay, you got multiple locations in one tour, but each one must be operated as a cost center, a separate cost center. So we got to know how much we're making. No, you're saying, well, I understood you to say that if it's just to the Turtle Center, it is about $30 that you get out of it. If the Botanic Park and what have you are included, then it's different prices. But we operate, is this the problem at the Turtle Center, that we're not operating it as a business cost center? That we don't know how much we're getting, what the average is that we're getting from a tour?
We know exactly what we're making on every tour, but there's multiple different tours with multiple.
So let me, again, I'm going to repeat what I said. There are tours that the Turtle Center sells, okay? And in that tour, they will list a tour to the Turtle Center, a stop at Hell, and a tour at Pedro. And that cost is going to be $25 to $30 for Turtle Center, and the other places will have their add-on into that cost.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I misunderstood that. But what my understanding is, since I've been back in here, is that the tours are sold on the ship for $4 to $5. Or we have a total of $4 or $5 that come shore. Forget about what is sold on the ship for. That was my understanding. Am I wrong in that?
So if what I said was misunderstood, if a tourist visitor walks up and buys a ticket to go into Turtle Farm, it's $45. If a package is sold on board the vessel, the average net that Turtle Farm gets out of that visit is $27. Yeah, okay. Average.
Mr. Chairman, I wonder if, in light of all that, what is the mix of tours? Turtle Farm, Hell, how many others are in any one tour?
Mainly three, Mr. Chairman, mainly 4 tours that are sold.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I am sure the Turtle Farms, the Turtle Center, we call it now, in the preparation of their annual budget, especially expenditure, it is done based against income. How many tours do you budget for on income side of your balance sheet? And what is the average cost you budget against those tours? Visitors to the farm.
So, through you, Mr. Chairman, to the member, it's not broken down on the statement they have with them. They have a gross revenue.
How do we arrive at that? I don't know, Mr. Chairman. What are the assumptions used? Because you got to come up with some assumptions. You might be off. We know what budgets are. They're not actuals. But most budgets are based on last year actuals. And you're telling me that because we're all here, we got a total amount, but we don't know on average what our income is on visitors to the center?
What I said was that the breakdown was not available in this document, but happy to say 2 things. Number 1, it would be based on assumptions from previous years, a historical record, and number 2, the revenue number in here has other revenue sources involved with it.
Mr. Chairman, I hear what the minister is saying, but let me give him a little scenario. I know you don't like for it be long. Me and my brother and cousins have some cows. Right, we raise a few little cows. We know we spend about $500 per month on buying feed. And we know that is $5 a sack per feed. And you would tell me we don't know what the income is for the turtle center pay by visitor, an average. All you got to do is know how much your revenue was on the amount on the customers, the clients that came in, and divide one into the other, and we'll know what the average thing is, you know. And you mean tell me we can't come up with that today? Nobody remember that, but I can remember that the feed up at agriculture cost $5.
Hopefully they had more visitors than you had cows.
Yeah, you better hope they got it, but it looked like
Yeah.
we're not getting paid
So-
for it.
What I said was that information was not available based on the statement that he had here.
Chairman, how can we come to Finance Committee? One, do not have that written information readily available for the minister, or two, suffer from selective amnesia as we get here. We need to know these things.
To you, Mr. Chairman, how many visitors did the turtle farm get in 2018?
I'll even go beyond that. I will tell you that the visitors that we get in a year will typically be between 250,000 and over 300,000.
That's all you can do is give me an estimate.
Sorry, I don't want to quote you a number that I don't have in front of me.
Okay, so
For you,
let's-
Mr.
let's-
Chairman,
okay, let's- okay.
we want to be precise.
All right, let's take the top level. So, 2019, we're estimating that we're going to have 1.9 cruise ship visitors, 1.9 million cruise ship visitors. You're only going to get 300,000 of them to come to the turtle farm?
Mr. Chairman, generally what we see is somewhere between 11 and 15% of the visitors that come here will come to Cayman Turtle Center.
And the minister says that we are getting value for money by subsidizing it, $3 million, and only 13%, no, a maximum 15% of our cruise ship visitors go to the turtle farm, and nothing is being done to increase that number?
The visitors that come by cruise are one revenue stream for the turtle farm. You have stayover visitors, you have friends and family, you have local visitors, and you certainly have quite a few parties there as another revenue source.
Divide out the numbers, you're looking at 287,000 people, including locals. His income versus the thing. The 300,000 includes stayover tourists and locals too? No. So we're getting less than 10% of the cruise ship passengers visiting the only turtle center in the world?
Between 11 and 15% of the arrivals? Of arrivals.
Of making plans to improve it? None.
Mr. Chairman,
Member for Newlands.
I wonder that the minister could confirm that I heard this correct, that we don't know what the cruise ships charge for the packages they sell on the ship that involve going to the turtle center. Is that correct? That we don't know what the cruise ships are charging?
Just
What they get there is not what they sell on them ship.
That's not part, that's not what we negotiate. We negotiate
Right.
our price. We bid. This is a breakdown we got here.
Okay. What, through the chairman, to the member, what the CEO said was that they negotiate a wholesale price for the Turtle Center with the cruise lines. They're not involved with what the cruise lines sell it for on board the vessel.
How do you set your price to the wholesale if you don't have any idea what they're selling it for? You don't think that's a very relevant information to have when you're setting your price, what the guy is going to sell it for?
But it becomes even more relevant, Mr. Chairman, when you consider the effect of price on demand. Because if you don't know what they're selling it for, they are completely in control of the demand for your tours. They control the entire market then. If you're not injecting to them and saying to them, look, you can't sell it for more than X amount of dollars. We have handed them complete freedom to control the demand for our Turtle Center.
Mr. Chairman, that is a model of shore excursion sales sold through cruise lines. It is a wholesale arrangement. We bid for the packages. We present what we are going to offer a tour for, and the cruise line develop from that what they offer their guests, including the pricing. Our packages typically bundle in not only the visit to Cayman Turtle Center, but it also bundles in transportation. It may bundle in trip to Stingray Sandbar. Other tours may bundle in a visit to Pedro St. James. Other tours may not even come to Turtle Center, may go into a turtle release on a beach. Some tours involve a meal at Cayman Turtle Center. This is not a trivial business we're in. So, each of these types of packages are priced accordingly. Because it's a wholesale arrangement, it's like any wholesale vendor with a retailer they're supporting. The retail is the entity that sells directly to the final consumer. And in wholesale arrangements, it is a retailer that traditionally sets the final price to the consumer. So in terms of a question as to whether we dictate the retail pricing, that is not the model that works in the wholesale side of the business. Now, we have a retail business as well where we sell direct to individuals who come. And I actually have the numbers. These are precise numbers, actual numbers, not even estimates as to what will happen. But this is up to October 2019. We had, in terms of stayover tours, as people who were here as air arrivals, were 61,732. We had direct ship tours, which is where we wholesale to a cruise line, 44,513. We had residents of 16,210, and we have what we call the TF tour, Turtle Farm tour, which is only the front part of the park, which is wholesale to independent tour operators in the Cayman Islands that themselves package it, 100,680. So in addition to what's going on at Cayman Turtle Center, we're supporting many, many people in the tourism industry in Cayman offering packages that predominantly involve cruise visitors that they then, same way that we wholesale to a cruise line, they in turn can also wholesale to a cruise line. So we give them a wholesale price. They bundle it in. The price we offer them is what they ask for. They want to know what's it just to come for 45 minutes to an hour and just see the turtle tanks and go. So to give a single number of what each one of those is sold at would be misrepresenting the business that we're in. So I hope that helps explain a little bit the mix of the different customer types and the mix of the different tours that we offer.
Mr. Chairman, can he then tell us, since he can rattle off the numbers of stayover that visited, to the passenger liners that visited his institution, the locals and whatnot, he must can tell us the average price each of those categories were charged last year.
Mr. Chairman, do we want to divulge that in a public arena? Because some of these are wholesale prices and the pricing is sensitive.
But that's not the question. What we selling wholesale price for when we have? Can I then ask? Are we satisfied that by negotiating down the value that we have placed on that tour, because that's what wholesale means, you have negotiated down now the value that you place on it. Are we satisfied that that is sufficient? Obviously not, because we're doing millions of dollars in subsidy.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
That was a stupid question. I'd withdraw that.
Mr. Chairman,
What I was going to suggest, in an effort to move this discussion along, is there any of this information that could be provided to the members that would, in a format in which they were asking for, such as the average fare, average fees and stuff to bring forward?
Before doing the suggestion.
Not trying to trivialize anything,
Yes,
sir.
no, Mr. Chairman, that's exactly a good approach, because it is far better that we contain it within the confidentiality of members of the Legislative Assembly than to state some of these numbers in an open forum in a very competitive industry.
well,
You're competing with the only one turtle set in the world?
What kind of competition we're dealing with? Three different. Mr. Chairman, may I respectfully, through you, notify all and sundry that I have a job to do. And if those who feel like I'm getting a little under their skin, they should not express that by virtue of talking to other people within these chambers or making their face up. Because that door is readily available to be open and they can now leave. I have a job to do here, and no amount of gestures or expressions are going to stop me from doing that job. Before that happens, whomever does that, I am going to move a motion that they leave and request that the Sergeant at Arms take them out off the premises into the public road.
Go ahead, member for Bodden Town West.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, sir, to the Honorable Minister. I think what we're trying to get at here, and just looking at the numbers in terms of the forecast statement of financial performance, where revenues are expected to increase by 24% from roughly 7.768 million to 9.6 million, which is roughly 1.844 million. We're trying to understand what is driving that massive increase of 24% in revenue, considering that literally no other government department is pushing 24% increase in revenues, not even the government. So we're trying to understand what's the driving force. That's really what we're trying to understand here. Because the next year, the revenues are only going up by 2.8%. So you're growing 24% from 2019 to 2020, but only 2.8% from 2020 to 2021. So we're trying to understand what's the big driver in 2020, and then what is not happening in 2021, why it has dropped so low. That's what we're trying to understand here.
Let me see it.
Yeah, well, the secondary revenue. Yeah. Huh? I'm talking releases.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may, Mr. You know,
Do have a question on the floor.
okay, go ahead.
That- Minister?
It's, that,
And some increases from the turtle release program.
through you, Mr. Chair, the member asked the question of what was going to drive revenue. The answer is it's driven by secondary revenue, food and beverage, retail sales, and if you work off the model that you increase the number coming through with the opportunity to sell them more when they're captured in your compound. The example is that when you go into the Turtle Center, you have the opportunity to go to a restaurant. You have the opportunity to spend time at the restaurant. You have the opportunity to buy on the way out. And if you look at the way the Turtle Center is structured, it's like a gauntlet to get out. You've got to go through the retail shops there. And they've been strengthening the business model of secondary income as they go forward, and that's what they've reflected as the increase.
So just so we're clear, is really food and beverage we're looking to increase to roughly 1.84 million?
Food and beverage, retail sales, and then we're going to have more money coming from our
Food and beverage, retail sales,
and turtle release.
and the turtle release program.
Okay.
Tours.
Here's where the rubber meets the road, Mr. Chairman. When I look on page 335 of the planning estimates that speaks about cruise ship departure tax, I see that government has increased the forecast amount is expected to go up by 598,000, which is roughly 100,000 passengers for 2020, 100,000 more cruise passengers, and also roughly 567 and 94,500 cruise passengers in 2021. When I turn over to page number 337 and look at tourism accommodation tax, you can kind of work backwards into the amount of visitors that the government is expecting to get. So if you look at those numbers and using the assumption that only 15% of cruise passengers, which is 100,000, so you're talking about 15,000 extra from the cruise passengers coming in. You look at tourism accommodation tax, which is almost relatively flat between year and year. So you're literally talking about roughly an increase, a base that is almost relatively flat in terms of numbers. And then when you start looking actually at the average increase in terms of what it is that you're making, these numbers simply don't add up. I've been sitting down here trying to work backwards into these numbers, and you're literally talking about getting 50,000 to 60,000 more people at the turtle farm in order to make these numbers. So when you're going to put 24% increase in revenues year on year on any business, I mean, regardless of what it is, a 2-3% increase you can live with. A 24% increase, you have got to be prepared to come down here and explain to us the assumptions that you're using to get that kind of money. Because if that is the case, that needs to be replicated across every single statutory authority in this country. But if they have the magic pill to increase revenues by 24%, I would very much like to hear it so that other departments and ministries and portfolios and SADCs can learn from them. And that's what we're trying to determine here. How did they get that 24% increase?
Can we provide any details on the spreadsheet?
No increase in change of offering new
So can we provide them the detail, so we don't have to level all this here, we're competitive in this thing? You know what I mean?
corporate events.
So through you, Mr. Chair, to the member, I've just been informed that the focus is on increasing corporate events, which are high yield. The focus is on expanding tour to include more tours, and the focus is on the food and beverage. Mr.
Chairman, never mind.
Mr. Chairman.
From East End.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, we were told a minute ago that, and you recommended some way to do it, that we should not be discussing these wholesale prices in the public, and it should be made available to members in a clandestine manner. But, Mr. Speaker, Carnival has advertised how much they're selling the tours for. They're adults for Turtle Farm and Wildlife Adventure with lunch. With lunch. And I know they don't bring lunch off the ship, so it's got to be you giving it to them. $69.99. $70 and we getting 30? Really? And the children is $59.99, $60 and we getting 27? I rest my case.
All in favor of EI 49, Cayman Turtle Conservation and Education Center Limited, for $4 million in 2020 and $3,960,000 in 2021, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no.
No. Mr. Chairman, division, please.
Madam Clerk, please take a division.
If he was sitting down, that's good. You're good.
Honorable Alden McLaughlin.
You wasn't here.
Yeah, he was sitting down.
I know you like something real, but you gotta find something to say.
Honorable Moses Colonel.
Aye.
Honorable Juliana O'Connor Connolly.
Aye.
Honorable Dwayne Seymour.
Aye.
Honorable Joseph Hugh.
Aye.
Honorable Tara Rivers. Honorable McKeever Bush.
Aye.
Honorable Bernie Bush. Captain Eugenie Banks.
Aye.
Miss Barbara Connolly.
Aye.
Mr. David White.
Aye.
Mr. Austin Harris. Mr. Ezard Miller. Mr. Alva Saku.
Nope.
Mr. Kenneth Bryan. Mr. Anthony Eden.
Aye.
Mr. Christopher Saunders. Honorable Arden McLean.
No. I don't make I don't get anything out of that, but at least I've got my voice heard. No, something I'll be done with them. We can't be selling this country under our feet and getting nothing out of it.
The results of the division, 11 ayes, 4 noes, 3 absentees. Accordingly, the item is carried.
Mr. Chairman, the Turtle Center is finished. I'd like to thank the CEO and his support staff that came and ask your permission to release them, sir.
Yes, sir. There. Thank you, too. While they're leaving, we will move back now to the beginning of on page 16 of your booklet, And we will next examine item DAT 13, Meteorological Services.
Hold on.
Okay. DAT 13, Meteorological Services, $1,679,532 in 2020 and $1,828,478 in 2021. Are there any questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Member from Bodden Town West.
I'm just trying to understand through you, Mr. Chairman, what's the, I notice the cost went up by 25% by 364,000. So I'm just trying to understand what's driving the increase in costs. Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Chairman, that was over the 2-year period. It went from 1.46 million to 1.8, roughly 1.83 million between 2019 and 2021. So just trying to understand what's driving it up each year.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
thank the
Please
member
proceed.
for the question. The 2020 increase is due to the 2018 5% COLA regarding various positions. One new position, the meteorological overseer, increase in the Caribbean Met Organization and Caribbean Institute, fees and increase in depreciation or GOES our satellite system and new building 2021, further increase due to AWOS Boy Network depreciation, and one additional position, Meteorological Observer 4.
Member from East End.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to ask a couple of questions about the Doppler station. First, the efficiency of it. What is the efficiency on it?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, to the member. I'm going to ask the Director General to answer that because it's a technical question.
Mr. Chair, through you.
Director General, can you state your name and your position before you proceed for the record?
My name is John Tibbetts. I'm the Director General of the Cayman Islands National Weather Service. The Doppler weather radar has been fairly efficient. We have minimal downtime in the past year. My tech reports none, to be honest with you. And we continue to have very limited problems with it.
Okay. I only ask that because I know that there has been some electricity outages up there down the bush there for some time. So I'm wondering if your backup is working properly. Did we do Mr. Chairman, did we do a review of the Doppler versus the mental health facility and its proximity? Did we do an analysis review of the effects of those proximities?
Mr. Speaker, through you. The Doppler weather radar was designed to surpass all of the safety measures that was needed. So there is no radiation leakage from the building or from the facility at all. And therefore, even though the mental health facility is expected to be fairly close, it is not expected to impact them.
Mr. Chairman, when the station was going there, I had quite an extensive look at its the effects and the radar and the radar emissions and the rays. And I had some schematics from the manufacturers and stuff. And I recognized that, and we all recognize that those waves go upwards and outwards. And there were, of course, the closer you get to it, to the station, the closer they would be to the ground. But when I saw the mental health, I wondered if those specs, and this is the question, if those specs have been looked at again and see to it, because they are going upstairs and some part of the mental health facilities, isn't that correct? I believe some of it is upstairs and some of it is A-frame, I think. And I'm wondering if those specs have been applied to the distances and the projection of those waves.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the director has not had any contact from the planning department inquiring, and the beam is 90 feet in the air, so as he said before, it shouldn't affect the facility.
Mr. Chairman, see Mr. Tibbetts, who is more technical than we all are, everyone was put together, so I don't want him to get into his thing now. But I am a little surprised that planning did not get comment from the weather meteorological station for a project that is going so close there too. Unless, of course, they have the specs on it and the beams and whatnot. But we all know that. Anyway, I just don't want us to expose, as vulnerable as we think they are, expose our people to that, because there are some, these are human beings that will be going there, and I know some of those buildings are a little taller than the ordinary building. And if it's 90 feet at the base of our Doppler station, then maybe our concerns can be allayed by the fact that it's 90 feet.
Member from Savannah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an easy one for the Director General. Periodically, over extended periods of time, I hear the description slack pressure gradient. If you could share with us what that means, because sometimes they repeat that 1, 2, 3 weeks in a row, and I wonder how these things stay in place so long with atmospheric pressure and stuff up there. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, they just went and opened up a can of worms. You sure you want an answer for slack pressure gradient?
All right, we move then. We'll take the vote. All those in favor of DAT 13, Meteorological Services, for $1,679,532 in 2020 and $1,828,478 in 2021, standing part of the schedule to the bill. Please say aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, with your permission, the Director General can be released.
Yes, sir.
And I'd like to thank him for coming down and providing answers.
We now turn to DAT 14, Public Transport Services, $847,159, 2020, and $886,765 in 2021. Are there any questions?
Mr. Chair. Okay.
Go ahead.
Member for Northside, you have the...
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to the Minister. I understand that the Public Transport Director Board are now issuing tax license on which they limit operation hours, i.e., they cannot operate the taxi before 4 o'clock in the afternoon or 5 p.m. The question is, what section of the law is that authority ground on?
Mr. Chairman, through you, I'm going to ask the Deputy Chief Officer for the Ministry with the responsibility, Mr. Dalton Watler, Dr. Dalton, to answer that.
Mr. Dalton, could I ask you to state your name and your position for the record, please?
Dalton Watler, Deputy Chief Officer for the Ministry of Tourism and Transport. Through you, Chairman, through the questions, there is no provision in the law that speaks about that. But there is a provision in the regulation that speaks about the hours of operation. So because we reach a maximum numbers of taxing operating in the day, we were receiving a lot of Caymanians asking for taxes. I advise the Minister that there was a provision in the regulations where we can provide employees for Caymanians. And the Minister said to me, explain it, and I explained, and I told him exactly what the regulation says. And based on the regulations, then we act upon.
So how do you handle a complaint from the general public that somebody who is taxis licensed to operate only after 5 o'clock in the evening refuses to pick up somebody at 11 o'clock in the day?
And through you, there are two distinctive concepts. One that speaks about the theory of enforcement, and the other one that speaks about the law itself. And within the regulation, there are provisions for us to conduct an investigation on behalf of the board. Whenever there is a particular complaint, and the public send the complaint to us, because there is a provision in the law that speaks about behaviors. So what we do is we take the complaint, and the complaint is then passed on to administrative arms. and the administrative arms is directed by the Director of PTU, Mr. Dirk. And from there, we proceed. Based on the law, there are three things that we can do. The first one is suspend, the second one is grant, and the third one is to not to grant.
Mr. Chair, make me, I think, explain it what the member from Northside was trying to say. You have the taxi, and there's a passenger or an individual on the road who needs a taxi, and they stop the taxi, and the taxi tells them, I cannot pick you up until 4 o'clock. Now you have a disgruntled customer, tourist, or someone on the road. That's the point, I think. Mr. Miller, is that what? I think that's the point Mr. Miller was trying to make.
If we accept the assumption that the individual is on the road, the regulations and the permission was for them to be on the road at 4 o'clock. If he's there on the road before 4 o'clock, so he will be infringing what the regulation says and what the permission was given for. He can drive. There is nobody who's going to tell him not to drive, but he cannot pick up the passengers. If the passengers pick up before 4 o'clock, and that if we don't are aware that the process that took place, there is nothing that we can do at that particular time.
His point is, what do you, through you, Mr. Chair, what do you then tell a tourist? I can't pick you up, and then they have a disgruntled tourist here on the island enjoying themselves and wants to tax. That's the point that Mr. Miller is trying to make.
Well, there are two, the taxes are, you can't define the taxi, the one with the yellow strip, which is the day taxi, and the blue strip, which is the 4 p.m. taxi. Is by any chance, to come back to the MLA for Northside, if the taxi driver doesn't pick up the passenger, then he is adhering to the law. And I understand that tourists will be disgruntled, but a 2 runs doesn't make it right.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I wonder if the Deputy Chief Officer could draw my attention to the specific regulation under which they are issuing part-time taxi license.
Again, there is no part-time taxi license. It's the permit of operation for that particular taxi. The board can, let me find it for you.
You'll be able to find it. And I have before me the Public Transport Regulations 2012, which is what is available in the Legislative Assembly.
Okay, in the law, sorry for my misdirective. In the law, section 52.1, subsection, the traffic law, the PPV, public passenger vehicle law, traffic law. Yes, he says, the number of hours for which a person may lawfully drive a public passenger vehicle in each period of 24 hours. That's section J.
That section refers to all taxi license. I don't interpret that section of allowing you to license some people at a disadvantage of operating only at night.
And, well, I guess there are interpretations at these instances.
Okay, so it needs to go to court then for proper interpretation. Second question, are the part-time license cheaper? Or how do you price a part-time license versus a, well, you say it's not a part-time license, it's specific hours that you can operate. What's the difference in price between somebody who has a taxi license that can operate for 24 hours and one who can only operate from 5 till 12 at night?
Through you, Chair, there is no such distinction in charges, sir. There isn't. We have, most recently, we developed an app, and when the app is downloaded, the app provides the prices.
So the person who is not privileged to operate, for instance, when the cruise ships are in dock, right, and provide taxi services, pays the same fee to somebody who's licensed only to operate after the cruise ships have left. And has to meet all the same standards in terms of cleanliness, training, everything else.
Well, there is no distinction, as I said, between the day taxis and the night taxis. They follow the same procedures.
Right. But you would admit that the opportunity for somebody to make a living driving a taxi is substantially higher if they can operate when the cruise ships are in port during the day. Most people that want a taxi take it during the day, even they stay over tourists.
Through you, Chair, you are correct, sir. I recently, in advice of the minister, developed a paper where the minister, Mr. Moses, asked me to develop a research document. And then with that document, I will present it to the minister for the minister to know the difference between blue taxis and yellow taxis, sir. You are right.
So the government is now getting into areas of limiting commerce and commerce opportunity for Caymanians.
Is
based on what? Based on number of people already in the industry?
So through you, Mr. Chairman, just want to, there's no fee for a taxi license. The cost is the medical that has to be paid.
But it's the same for a part-time as a full-time?
0-0.
No, the medical.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the important thing to me is that we are making people pay the same cost to get a license for a restricted opportunity for income, because you license them to work after 5 o'clock in the evening.
Yeah, the cost of the medical. There's not
Whatever
a fee to government,
Yeah.
but they have to have a medical,
And they
current
have to have
medical.
a driver's license, and they have to go through training and all that.
So the second, you had another question?
The second question is government now venturing in to controlling entrepreneurial and commerce opportunities for Caymanians in certain industries?
Is that from the transport aspect of it with taxis and the licenses, I'm assuming is the question you want answered. Number one, the qualification and requirement along with the training is that anybody who applies for a taxi license and receives a taxi license must be Caymanian. Number two, we have 279 taxi licenses now that are operating, and we have another 65 4 to 12 licenses. The reason we want to create as much opportunity as possible, but we also want to create it in a way that it meets demand and supply. So the example is that if it was an unregulated process of the number, if you had 500 taxi licenses with supply and demand now, there basically wouldn't be work for that number. So incrementally, as stayover and demand has increased, numbers have increased. The genesis of the 4 to 12 was demand, because there had been so many requests and a number of complaints to the transport that there were not taxis available, especially at the airport. So it was looked at to see what number of specific taxis would be needed in that time frame. So it involves passengers that get in late on flights, passengers that come in on time on scheduled flights, and also the requirement for friends and family, tourism, guests, overnight visitors that are looking for a taxi in that time frame to go out to other parts of the island from where they're staying.
Mr. Chair.
Head member from Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, can the minister say again exactly the reason why there's a limitation on numbers of taxi license? I didn't quite understand what he said.
When we first started reviewing this, because of the growth in the industry itself, and the highest demand for the taxi comes from visitors to the island, whether they come by cruise or stay over, we were somewhere around 220 licenses. And what we found was that that was meeting demand, and they were able to make ends meet, and it became an honorable profession that people wanted to be involved in, number one. Number two, they go through a pride training program, and they represent Cayman as ambassadors to the people who are used. We have continued to move the number up. You have attrition that affects one side of it, but you have the influx and the growth that affects the other. So we've balanced the number needed with supply-demand issue. Trying to let everybody be franchised into this and nobody be disenfranchised because there was too much supply and it wasn't a business to where you could make a living out of it. Now, if you look at what we've been able to do, we've been able to increase those numbers twofold from...
Mr. Chair, I appreciate the minister trying to campaign for what they've been doing. But that's not the question I'm asking, Mr. Minister. I'm asking you, what was the reasons for limitations? Are you saying that the government is moving away from the free enterprise approach in respect to taxes? Because it is a business. And if...
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is the approach that has always been for taxis. It's been a number that was placed on the number of licenses that were given out.
Okay, Mr. Chair. Is that the approach that we use in other industries? And why particularly is this approach of limitation of free enterprise being done with transport but not being done with other industries?
So again, through you, Mr. Chair, I found a moratorium on the number of taxi licenses. And we lifted the moratorium and grew the number of taxi licenses based on the demand that we saw in the market.
Okay, Mr. Chair, maybe the minister is misunderstanding my question. I can rephrase it for him. I understand you had a moratorium when you got there and you were in charge as the minister. I'm asking you about the approach from free enterprise. We have one that's controlled and one that is not. I'm asking, why is it a controlled approach with transport as opposed to every other industry in the Cayman Islands that is not controlled and open for competition?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the traffic law 2011, right? It says the governor and cabinet may, after consultation with the board and the director, give directions as to the total number of omnibuses and taxis which may be registered by the director under Part 2 at any time, and the director shall supply the board with all such information from the register as the board may require for the purpose of enabling the board to limit or suspend applications, permits under this part.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank the Minister for that eloquent answer. I know what the law says. I know what the regulation says, Mr. Minister. I'm asking you about the approach to free enterprise. What is this the government's approach that you can control some industries but let others be free? That's what I'm asking you, not about what the law says. We know that what you're doing is lawful. I'm asking you if you accept that that's how it should be.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I accept it because it's the policy of the government. And I accept that it's a need in the industry that is meeting supply and demand. And I've gone to great lengths to try to explain reasoning behind it.
Through you, Mr. Chair, tourism is very important to the Cayman Islands, a second pillar. Do you think that that control approach should be done with financial services?
No.
But why the tourism industry and transport related matters?
The seasonality and the balance that is needed for tourism to deliver a product that's acceptable is the genesis of the policy that we now have in place. Not a policy that I invented or the staff came up with. It's a policy that was put in years before us being involved, and I believe the reason it was there is, again, because of the supply and demand and the sensitivity of the market. If you look at the things that we've been trying to do is create a flattening of the season and a yearly opportunity for taxis and tour buses to have more business in the slow season and make the entrepreneurial opportunity greater for them.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I appreciate your answer again, Mr. Minister. I know that the government does a lot of reports and research and papers to make sure that their policy is on par with international standards and guidance lines. Do you have any data to support this position?
The numbers are based on the rate of growth and the proposed developments and the estimates for the following time period.
Just to conclude this line of questioning in respect to the transport and the approach from an industry perspective, there's other industries other than transport that are seasonal, like restaurants. Is the government going to start controlling the restaurant competition based on that policy approach?
No.
So why the difference between the two? Both are seasonal. That's the argument that you just used.
There's no existing legislation that empowers that type of approach.
Mr. Chair, through you, I agree with you. I know that it's existing, and I know it was there before we both got here, but that doesn't necessarily mean we agree. Would you agree that it needs to be changed, Mr. Minister?
Change in what way?
Change either to free for all or control for all.
So you would prefer to have a free-for-all? Is that what you said?
Mr. Minister, I'm not the government. You are. This is your ministry. Now, if you want me to come over there and be the minister, I'll be happy to do that. But I'm asking you, what is the government's approach to this? Because what is happening by way of a policy you have accepted and a legislation that you're accepting is that you're picking which industry you want to regulate. Now that becomes a lot of potential foul play to happen. But why not the restaurants? Why is it the restaurants have to compete with everybody else, but taxi drivers get the luxury of controlled by your department?
Well, I started off by saying that's the policy of the government, okay?
Okay, Mr. Minister, if Mr. Chair, if I can move on to another question in respect to the same line item.
Please do.
The board, the transport board, would definitely know that the NRA recently had 2 seminars back to back, year after year, and in those seminars, the specialists that came spoke about the current public transport process that we have to be one of the most dangerous across the world, in par with places like India, Jamaica, and less developed countries. Have you guys taken any directives to make any necessary changes to the transport system in respect to those concerns that they highlighted by the specialists our government departments brought to the country?
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank the member. Yes, we've had a strategic session for future strategic goals. I'm going to ask the Director of Tourism, who sits as the chair, just to go through it with you, if you'd like.
Director, can you state your name and position for the record before you proceed?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rosa Harris, Chairman of the Public Transport Board and also the Director of Tourism. The Public Transport Board in 2017 did an assessment of the sector as a follow-up to a Deloitte study that reviewed the taxi rates and the entire taxi framework, which we now have an app for. But as a result of looking at the sector and all of the various needs that were expressed, whether that was by Cayman Islands Tourism Association, by the public in terms of concern, we identified 7 top objectives for the transport sector. Governance is the first, and it talks about managing the sector with supervision and direction for effective leadership. That's internal and external, as we depend on other sites such as the port and the airport that feed into it, as well as private enterprise. Strategic and future planning is the second, a goal of having a 5-star public service. So with this particular one, omnis were of a concern, and you would have seen additional routes being delivered. Over the last 3 years, we've been able to carve out new routes and add more buses on the ground. Education and training. Being able to serve a very diverse visitor pool, whether that is day trippers through cruise or stayover visitors who may have multi-sites on their itinerary wanting to get around the island.
Mr. Chair, through you, and for the director, I don't want to cut you off, but the area of concern I was trying to get to was the safety elements. So if you want to focus on that would be fine for me.
That would be under governance, sir. The Public Transport Board has spent a considerable amount of time discussing how we shape the sector for the future. The type of vehicles for Omni, the efficiency of them, the size of them, given the current situation with traffic right now, and how public transport can be a solution for the current situation. Also, ongoing follow-up with complaints. There's a number of complaints that is received by the public transport unit, and we do hold operators accountable. We are also considering another tranche of training. So 5 years ago, every single public transport operator had to go through Promises customer service training as well as Know Your Cayman Islands training. We've identified a need for accelerated course in determining an ambassador training, just understanding their role and how important it is to be always on and serve our customers with quality service at all times. And we've done various mystery shopping assessments over the last 5 years as well that have identified some areas for improvement. We've achieved some, and then others are under development. But particularly, we are growing as a country and our roadway system is changing. And that too needs consideration for the public transport vehicles. The size, debarking safely, and also onboarding passengers safely, and ensuring that when you build hotel properties that there's adequate provisions in parking lots, etc., that make room for public transport vehicles. So we've had consultation with CIT as to what their main issues are. We're due for a check-in with them. The largest concern at the time was the taxi rates and publishing taxi fares to the public. We've been able to accomplish that. But coming back to safety, we manage it through complaints, follow-up, and citations with operators, and we also elect for training. So we've had a number of operators who have had infractions, and we've assigned follow-up training to the specific need. And I'd prefer not to have to provide specifics, but I'm happy to provide a sidebar as to some of the challenges that we've had with the sector in order to assign some coaching for incidences not to happen again. But most of our concerns is more of a customer service and also driving, reckless driving, and that's within the realm of the Royal Cayman Islands Police, who we coordinate with as well for when we do get those types of complaints.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, through you again, I hear the director and what she's saying about CETA's concerns. I'm actually kind of trying to get to the local element here. The Caymanians who take the bus, the residents who take the bus, the NRA officials who came down to visit spoke about the stop and start at ad hoc approaches, just pull off the side of the road, bending on the corners, and they said that we should be having actually specific allocated spots for stoppage. Do you have a report of any sort that came from those specialists indicating that these are the things that you need to fix, that you guys are starting to fix, if you have?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, we have consulted with the ministry for planning in their master planning. We'd like to think that the Public Transport Board was somewhat ahead of the curve in suggestion of lay-bys on major motorways so that transport vehicles can pull off a major roadway and onboard or off-board passengers safely. We have given our feedback on the master planning, and we continue, the Public Transport Unit continues to have dialogue with the Ministry of Planning on the various works that's a part of the master plan.
I don't want to dwell anymore, so I'll ask you one last question. The key point from the specialist, the road specialist that came, was that you cannot have buses stopping at their own will. Other drivers need to know or have an expectation of when a bus is going to stop. It becomes habitual. We know that the bus is about to stop. So there's less chance of accidents. There are people who are more cautious around the bus stoppage areas. At this point, the policy within transport, or for the bus drivers, they can stop anywhere they want. They said that that's the key focus of the most dangerous type of public transport system you can have in the world. Have you decided to do something about that policy for bus drivers?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, we do have a proposal for the Minister of Tourism in terms of master transport planning that addresses that. However, it takes into consideration the type of vehicle and a full revamp of the public bus system. So the tour, obviously, and the taxis wouldn't fall into that. taxis go point to point, and tours are prearranged. So this specific concern that you have is with the omnibus category.
Correct.
And yes, we have considered it, and we do have a proposal for the minister for consideration that's pending.
Is that something could be shared with this house, or?
That was the presentation that we had to reschedule, but we do have.
Or go to the minister first. But NRA already has seen that proposal because they were in the same room.
Yes, they did.
Or if you can't share it, maybe you can indicate
Through you,
when.
Mr. Chair, the NRA has been part of that proposal because they were in the same room when the discussion took place. So if you look at the building of the road, it would be in their design for the layways for them to pull off and know where they're going to be.
I apologize to follow up another question now, because I hear what you're saying about new roads, but there's many roads that are active now that will not have that. I'm asking, is that this review or suggestion that's going to be made to you, does that have within it to change the policy of bus drivers to stopping at ad hoc approaches and actually stop at allocated spots? Because that is where the danger comes in.
Yes, we do have plans, and that's something that the board is currently working on through you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Last question and I'm done, Mr. Chair. When somebody makes an application to get a taxi license, I'm not sure if the director is the right person to answer this, but I guess the minister will direct whoever is necessary. When a person makes an application for a taxi license, what is the protocol on time to get back to that person to let them know whether they're going to get it or not? And how long is it? Because I've had people who are still waiting after 2 years, 2 years, good standing government workers who want a nice little side job to be able to survive in the cost of living. 2 years, no answer to this day. So is there a protocol on how long it takes to get back to a person, and what is it?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'll answer that in twofold. So we've had various starts and stops to the review of the taxi pool. The minister made an indication that he found a moratorium in place, and that's something that we reviewed. There was a considerable wait list at the time that we had to go through each person and ask if they were still interested. We cleared that list. Then we were able to approve about 33 licenses about 3 years ago. Was the first iteration of taxis that were deployed with the lifting of the moratorium. In that time frame, we also then acquired a lengthy new list of taxi operators. And with the provision of, I believe it's section 46.2 that talks about consulting on either limiting the amount of taxis, we do consult on the number of taxis based on the rate of growth that we're seeing. And then a target is established. So I can see where someone may have thought that it's taken an extended period of time to get through. However, we also have had challenges where we've tried to contact persons. They've either haven't completed the full application, they still have something pending, but they think that their name is on the list. So if there's someone who believes that they're on a list that they need to be addressed, we need that name so we can address it. Specifically, we do have a current list that is on a wait list for the evening shift, the 4 and overnight. And that's the only wait list that we currently have. So the second part to my response to the question is, the board meets monthly, and we also do round robins weekly. The round robins facilitate renewals and drivers, mainly in the tour or limo category. But for taxis, are always tabled if they meet the criteria, and we meet regularly. It's the one board that has to meet because of the number of subjects that's on an agenda. So we can easily get backlogged if we don't meet monthly. Depending on when you apply, it should not be a considerable amount of time, more than 2 months. There are times when we don't get through the full agenda, where we do run out of time. So I won't say that in a month that we would get through everything. We do at times have a backlog. So if someone is not happy with thinking that they're waiting for 2 years, based on where the board has reviewed taxi permits thus far, we only are now considering overnight to feel the need for the airport, late night clubs, restaurants, etc.
Mr. Chair, I just realized a very sensitive matter that just came to my attention. How do you decide, or is there any provisions from stopping a person from getting a taxi license if they have, say for example, a criminal record of sexual assault? Is there anything that stops or that the board can use in their discretion to stop that person from getting the license, even if they have done their time, so to speak, and their record has been spent?
How do you get spent with that?
Mr. Chairman, through you, we do have a condition that the board operates under with a 3-year limitation for those that have a criminal record. So it doesn't specify, the condition that we operate under doesn't specify a specific criminal activity. It could be driving without a seat belt. Once they have an infraction on their record, there's a waiting period of 3 years to be considered. I'll just get the clause in which we use for that condition by the board. Section 47(5), which speaks to safety and the community, is where we would classify infractions. So 5B, the board may in its discretion refuse or consider an application for a permit by a person who, during the last 3 years, have been convicted in any court for illegal drugs, offense involving dishonesty, an offense against a person, offense relating to dangerous or reckless driving, whether or not causing death, any offense under section, and then it lists various sections. So we take the safety of the traveling public very seriously on the Public Transport Board. And if someone has applied and has an infraction on their record, they do have to wait 3 years.
Mr. Chair. Member from Newlands, and then I'm going to go to the member from Northside first. So you're giving way? Okay. Member from Northside?
Through you.
I'll come back to you.
Yeah.
Sorry, sir.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I understand that the board is relying on 46(2) in order to limit the number of taxis. And it says the governor and cabinet may, after consultation with the board and the director, give directions as to the total number of omnibuses and taxis which may be registered by the director under Part 2 at any time, and the director shall supply the board with all such information from the register as the board may require for the purpose of enabling the board to limit or suspend applications for permits under this part. Question is, the last directive by cabinet did authorize the part-time licensing of taxis, or no?
Yes, 100. Mr. Chairman, yes.
Okay, so you have in fact a directive from cabinet that says X number of full-time, what is the breakdown? How many full-time, how many part-time?
Mr. Chairman, the paper only addresses part-time, and the quota was given at 100. We're currently at 65.
So that's what you're relying on for the part-time. You're not relying on 47.3, which says subject to 46.2, which is the section I just read, and subsection 4 of 47. The board shall consider every application and may, in its discretion, either grant a permit subject to such conditions, if any, as it thinks fit, or refuse to grant a permit. You actually have a quota for part-time, and that directive from Cabinet specifies the time that that taxi can operate.
That would be correct.
Okay. Would it be possible to get a copy of that directive from Cabinet? Because I have to explain this to my constituents who are complaining about that they can't pick up somebody on the way to North Side at 2 o'clock in the day, and the likelihood of that person getting another taxi is almost a 0 to nil because they can't start running the taxi service till 5 o'clock in the evening. So I would like to have a copy of that directive.
Member from Savannah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is back to the safety aspect. I know that the lady has spoken in regards, but this is the operators of these omnibus. I go north side 5 days a week, literally, sometimes twice a day, and I see these buses overtaking me in that famous 15 miles per hour zone, which is not your problem. The police should be monitoring them. Who do I complain to or write to when I see this happening, and the ridiculous way that some of these drivers, like the member from Georgetown Central, they pull off anyway. They see no indication what's going to happen. Somebody will get killed if someone don't get a grasp of what's going on there. But specifically, I'm talking about in the school zones, Clifton Hunter and Bordentown and Savannah Primary School.
Mr. Chairman, if I could respond with how to communicate a complaint outside of regulating traffic offenses. We have an email address, caymentransport@gov.ky. We also now have a Facebook page that you can send messages to. Additionally, the app CI Go has a feedback feature that you should be able to send an email directly from the app through to the caymentransport@gov.ky email address.
Can I just ask one question on the Facebook page? What is the title of the Facebook page?
Yeah, it should be Cayman Transport, no?
Will, Mr. Chairman, through you, will
Cayman
WhatsApp photographs or WhatsApp videos always do as well?
Mr. Chair, you can send photos and video via email. I don't believe public transport has a published cell phone number for WhatsApp.
But the people that know IT know how to get it from a WhatsApp to email, no problem.
The reason why I thought you said that there was a Facebook page.
Mr. Chairman, yes, there is. I believe it's Cayman Transport, but I'm just double checking.
That's what I wanted to understand. I thought would be helpful for the public and for us to know.
Yes, sir, I can confirm that it is Cayman Transport on Facebook.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Member for Northside.
I'm so glad to hear that they're moving into the electronic age. But I noticed that the van that used to be parked, or still parked, Frank Sound sometime, with a person in it monitoring the bus traffic, seems to now have been moved to the Ronald Forbes playing field. Or is that two? And at what time are we going to get GPS trackers for these buses?
Okay. Mr. Chairman, we explored the option of GPS trackers and encountered a challenge. And the challenge was with the insurance coverage and the validity of adding the tracker to a privately owned vehicle. The project was abandoned given the challenge, as the operator would have to agree for the installation of the device. So we have thought about that, in that we would like to know, particularly for buses who turn around that should be going to the eastern districts, as that has been a chronic issue of not completing the route. We did pursue trying to install GPS trackers, but unfortunately we're unsuccessful given that the operators own the vehicles themselves.
But, Mr. Chairman, could I draw the chairman attention to the section I just quoted under 47.3? If you can add a condition that I can't work till 5 o'clock, certainly you can make a condition that I accept a GPS tracker.
Mr. Chairman, it's something that we're happy to note and explore again, as we always want to be able to provide good customer service to the people of Cayman.
Let me explain to you, Mr. Chairman, what's happening. I don't know what it costs to have this person sitting down at Frank Sound in an air-conditioned car all day long with the engine running, and now one at Ronald Prospect Field. But all the buses do is drive past it, turn off into a side road, and sleep for 15, 20 minutes until they figure, okay, I go to Wet Rum right now, and they turn out of the road and they go back. The person sitting in Frank Sound or sitting at Ronald Prospect Field has no possibility of knowing what the bus driver does beyond their field of vision. It would be better to use the government CTT system to track people if you don't want to put a GPS in it, if you get a complaint. Because they're still, although their route requires them to go to Rumpoint, because you all are not enforcing the simple requirement of the law that they pay their fare when they get on the bus. That's what you require, right? Your buses, your taxis that you have licensed, do not collect the fare. That's so they can put my Northside people out, Frank Sound in the rain, and only charge up the bottom down, or to Frank Sound. And your solution to that is to place this vehicle with one person, I've even seen 2 people in it, right, at Frank Sound and Ronald Forbes Field. What are they monitoring? What are they doing?
Please state your name and your position for the record for us, please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Dirk Banks. I'm the Director of Public Transport. In relation to the question just asked, the officer there provides numerous services besides monitoring the vehicle. Also in regards to load factor, which is submitted to the board, as the member stated, in relation to the law regulating the number of buses. So that is one way that we determine whether or not additional buses is required. You would appreciate that a GPS would not be able to count the number of passengers, regardless if you have them in the vehicle.
But Mr. Chairman, I've been observing this people for a couple of years. I have never seen them stop a bus and count the people in it. Are you telling me that with those buses tinted out, they can sit there in that vehicle in air condition and tell them the people in the bus? And by the way, that's a traffic offense, you know, if you overload the bus. That's what the police are for. But they don't do nothing else either, so I don't expect no help from them. So how are they monitoring the route?
Mr. Chairman, through you, for instance, this was a change of venue from the Frank Sound Junction to the Ronald Forbes Playfield, because the complaint previously mentioned from the member was that persons were going and parking by the fire station. But by the vehicle moving to the Ronald Forbes playfield, it provides an additional service so that it ensures that the vehicle does travel at least to Ronald Forbes playfield. And we can monitor the east end and north side route that they do traverse that route. So for instance, if your route takes you to East End via Frankstown and Queens Highway, you must travel past that vehicle, and that is coordinated from the bus depot, that we know the number of buses and in the sequence that the buses are actually traversing that road. In addition to the other challenge that the member talked about, the GPS, because we're a government entity, we have to comply with the Constitution, which talks about right to family life and privacy. And we're actually awaiting legal advice on the GPS matter. So we are actively looking at it, but that is the moment where we're at.
Mr. Chairman.
So you parked at Ronald Forbes playing field, and the bus route is to Rumpoint. How do you determine, sitting at Ronald Forbes playing field, that the bus went to Rumpoint?
Mr. Chairman, thank the member for the question. The buses to Rumpoint travel every half hour. On occasion, when we do have enough staff, we also have a staff at Rumpoint to ensure that the buses do travel to Rumpoint. But that is not always the case.
Mr. Chairman.
From East End, the member from
I've been trying to get in, y'all.
Newlands asked for.
I don't know where this. I don't know how we reach these points. I got so many questions asked as a result of all these answers that has been forthcoming. First one, let's go backwards from the last answer. Ronald Forbes playing field. The member from Northside and I have been on this, 20 years now or something. How we know that they're going through East End now?
Mr. McLean, thank you for the question. Sorry, Mr. Chairman, through you. In relation to the question, the buses traverse via Frankstown, Queens Highway, and East End, or they traverse via East End, Queens Highway, and Frankstown Road. Right. So if a bus is traveling from East End to Queens Highway and Frankstown Road, and like previously stated, the officer there is in contact with the officer at the bus depot. He knows when the person is dispatched, and if they do not see the vehicle pass, we know that the vehicle has not traveled through Queens Highway, because obviously they would not have passed the vehicle in question. They were actually turned around. And then we would initiate enforcements in relation to the lack of service.
I don't want to hear about enforcement, because that word not synonymous with public transport. That doesn't work with public transport. I can tell you, they're fooling you somehow. Because I witnessed them turn around right in the middle of East End, go back Georgetown. Personally, I've done that. I don't travel on them, but they're fooling you somehow. You are being outwitted by simple bus drivers. No. I want to see what kind of outwitting they're doing you further. You just came here, Mr. Chairman, and said that private Bill of Rights with the Constitution is right to family life and privacy is preventing you from putting GPS on vehicles, and that Attorney General got to respond to that? Really? When my vehicle is currently being monitored by the licensing department, and we need privacy, Bill of Rights, the right to found a family, and the privacy of a family to put on GPS on a bus that is controlled by this country publicly, and they are currently being monitored. I hope they're licensing them, because that's what it was intended. We got asked those questions when they come, so you don't worry, we got to deal with that one. But that was the intent, unless it was ill-conceived. And this thing about punishing, disciplining people. Unfortunately, I don't have my letter here that I wrote, because I will read that today, because it's time now we get this out. There has never, I have had numerous complaints from my constituents, just like Mr. Miller has had from his, where these bus drivers are just rude, downright disgusting. And they have reported them, and every time the board does something, in my case, they almost kill the 80-year-old man getting out of my truck. The board, according to the board, when they do something, legal overrule them, tell them that they shouldn't do that, and they need teeth in the law. Wasn't that what you all told me? And he is back out there killing more people, or attempting to. This needs to stop. Mr. Minister, my good friend, we need to bring this law with disciplinary measures. I got a constituent that has, he been out of jail now since Christ was on Rivera Beach, but they're refusing to give him a license. And the director just said, the chairperson just said, that they use that provision for 3 years. I mean, like somebody know in politics. For 3 years. Only used 3 years, yet he's been out of jail 15. And there's no convictions within the last 3 years. If you're not going to give the people their license, tell them so. Do not run them around and tell them go Arden or go Dalton Waterloo, or go waiting on the Attorney General, or we waiting on the Premier. Stop it. These people's lives depend upon it. They are Caymanians. And if you're not giving it to them, let them go and find something else. We keep stringing them out and feeding them a little further, you fool. This is wrong. If you're going to bring the law, let's bring it. Let's put the provisions in there in the different categories you are not allowed to have a license. We just said offense against the person is 3 years. This is an offense against the person. He's been out of prison now 15 years and he can't get a license. Yep. Tell the person. We need to stop playing footsie with our people.
Member from
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
One Town West. Newland, sorry.
I as I sat here, I'm trying to be very disciplined in my approach and not ask too many questions or make too many comments. But
yeah,
I have to just say I agree with the leader of the opposition.
We've been going on this for
I have
an hour and a half.
Constituent who has waited over a year to be contacted back. He has now sold his bus. It's that bad. He's just given up on the whole idea that he can be self-employed. It has to stop. But my question is, every finance committee we come here and we go through this process, Mr. Chairman, and nothing gets improved. What are we going to do to improve the discipline on the roads with the bus drivers? I had an incident the other day. I met one coming towards me, reversing on the main road, and when I slowed down, blew my horn and tried to tell him he was breaking the law, I got the bird. If a member of this honorable house can't stick the head out the window and say you're breaking the law without getting a middle finger stuck up at them, this is time to do something drastic. I know drivers, especially young, new drivers, that are scared to go near a public bus. They get nervous. But anyway, my question is, Mr. Chairman, when are we going to get routes into Newlands, because we've been promised that now since last finance committee. I brought a motion asking for it. We need public bus routes into Newlands, and we need bus routes, permanent bus routes, servicing the two university colleges that we have, ICCI, UCCI. Our students have to hitch rides to class. We need public transportation to the schools as well.
Minister?
Right, okay. Through you, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Thank the member for the question. I know we had a private member's motion, and we had been looking into some of the bus routes, especially in the member who brought the private member's motion. I shared with him that we had brought some legislation because of needing to be able to drive over and incorporate some private roads. So that's one step. I've certainly noted the concern, which is, I think, unanimous, over enforcement, and had a quick word of how enforcement really lays between police and the number of enforcement officers. I would encourage everyone that when they see something taking place, to report it and report the license number as well, with the commitment from public transport, from the enforcement, to look into it, and if there is a need for more enforcement, certainly let us be aware of that and understand, again, that there is a problem and it needs to be addressed.
Member from East End, final question, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I want to go at something else, which is these segways that are on the road that is being leased out to tourists, I suspect. Are they licensed by public transport?
Mr. Chairman, through you, the short answer is no. Public transport only licensed person who carry persons for hire or reward, and because they drive themselves, it's more or less like a rental car, which we don't license.
So, what kind of business license does that carry then? What kind of business license is required? Okay, what about all those bicycles coming off the cruise ships? Those things that are being pulled by the Wrangler Jeeps. The trawlers and stuff. Are they licensed by public transport?
Are you referring to the Jolly Roger trolley, Mr. Chairman, if that's the question?
Jolly or Molly or whichever one, but there's one.
Mr. Chairman, through you, once the vehicle is carrying persons for hire or reward, so if the trolley is licensed by the Public Transport Board, but again, bicycles, because they're not carrying any additional persons, they're riding it themselves. I'm not sure if they would need a trade and business license from the Department of Investment and Commerce, but not require a license from the Public Transport Board for the bicycles.
And the most important criteria for the provisions of public transport license is safety, insurance, the like.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman, and that is also done in conjunction with the application process and a person driving record, criminal conviction, and medical. Make sure the person is fit to drive, in addition to a drug screening. So all that combined is for the safety of the traveling public.
Okay, and these things progressively get a little more difficult. Who inspects those on behalf of the Public Transport Board?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure what inspection the member is talking about. If you could just clarify what inspection referring
How
to.
do you know that they're safe?
Sorry, who know what is safe? What are you talking about? Bicycles, segways, vehicles? I'm sorry.
You said you are not responsible for bicycles. You're responsible for buses, Jolly Roger, Mala Roger, whatever they are, and all those things that fall in your remit. How do you know that they're safe for the public?
Mr. Chairman, through you, all vehicles, regardless of public transport, required to be inspected by the Department of Vehicle and Driver's License. However, public transport vehicles, in addition, has an additional layer on it, and those has to do with the comfort and convenience of the customer. So, for example, your vehicle may be licensed, but it doesn't have an air conditioning, but that would not be suitable for a public transport vehicle, even though the Department of Vehicle and Driver's License said your vehicle is mechanically sound. So the public transport unit has an additional inspection for the convenience of the traveling public.
You see how easy that was? That's all I wanted. Now, are you satisfied that Jolly or Molly, Roger, or what is cart that pull around people, that is safe?
Mr. Chairman, through you, as previously stated, the responsibility of whether or not a vehicle is roadworthy falls on the Department of Vehicle and Driver's License. As far as the other entities of it, it meets the standard required by the Public Transport Board.
But certainly, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, he will agree with me that if he is of the view that it's not safe for the public, that he has a responsibility and the Public Transport Board has a responsibility to take it off the road through the licensing department or the police.
Mr. Chairman, through you, that vehicle qualifies also as a special vehicle, and in doing so, it has to have a special permit from the Commissioner of Police, which restricts the vehicles to traveling only up to 15 miles an hour, and is actually restricted to only travel in the 25 miles an hour zone. That way, it does not cause so much traffic congestion.
Well, you know, you're getting ahead of yourself. I was trying to lead you up to it. Every night I go home, they're on the road in the 50 mile an hour zone, and it's going whoop up, whoop up, whoop up, whoop up. Let's see how we deal with that one now. Then, since you jump ahead, then fine, go ahead, tell me.
If that was reported to us, sir, that would be the remit of the police for the vehicle obstructing or unsafe or obstructing traffic while moving. That would be the remit of the police.
The police hasn't reached here yet. They'll come. I'm just asking you what your responsibilities are when these things, the public transport now, when these things are on the road and they're unsafe. And you're saying if they're reported, then you have a responsibility to ensure that those vehicles are operated in the manner that they're licensed to do so. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. We will bring that to the attention of the Department of Vehicle and Driver's License.
Okay. Tell me something. In addition to the board chairperson said that you do training for these people on safe driving and the likes. And I'm glad to hear that we are looking at way leaves, areas to make our buses come off and bus bus terminals, bus stops. But in addition, is that a regular training or continuing education with bus drivers on safety driving and courtesy and how they treat people on those buses? Is it continuous, ongoing, perpetual education?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, there is ongoing training. However, it usually occurs for those persons who commit infractions, because based on the number of persons that we have, it will be quite a lengthy process to retrain everyone.
No, well, we need to do that now. We need to have an ongoing training like how doctors do. Because if you think doctors need it, them drivers out there need it. You have to constantly educate them on driving, because they drive one way today and the next day, tomorrow, they drive another way. And it's becoming dangerous for our public. Especially when you hear Mr. Miller and I speak, it's about the Eastern Route. I don't go West Bay that often. But it's about the Eastern Route. And it's becoming unbearable with the type of drivers that we have on the roads. I hear the complaints about West Bay too, but I can't speak specific to them, Mr. Chairman. But that Eastern Route, I don't know who we have up there driving these vehicles. And I agree with you, when the police come, we're going to deal with them too, sir, because the police doing nothing to stop them either.
All in favor of DAT 14, Public Transport Services, $847,159 in 2020 and $886,765 in 2021. Standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to thank Mr. Banks and team that came down, and with your permission, they can be released. Yeah, thank you.
We turn our attention now to DAT 15, Tourism Advisory Activities, Marketing, Public Relations, Sales and Promotions, $18,452,373 in 2020 and $19,160,162 in 2021. Are there any questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Member from East End.
Mr. Chairman, I need to. I know, Mr. Chairman, that this is mere advertising, but it's about doing it for stakeholders, and this is spending money to bring customers to our shores, which is to fill the hotels, really, in essence. Mr. Speaker, the law is very regulations are very specific about small businesses advertising in the hotels. This was put in place a very long time ago, and it looks like they are refusing to do this now with small businesses. Mr. Speaker, I recently went to Bangor, Wales to visit my niece in university, and these little small hotels, a very small town, small hotels, but every activity in that small tourist town of Bangor is advertised in every hotel lobby in these brochure holder things. I want to know why it's not being done in this country when I'm approving expenditure of 18 plus another 4 or 5 million per year to advertise, to bring people into my country. And there are small little businesses, they're little restaurants and the likes. I got one of my greatest experience in Bangor was a little brochure about a little Italian restaurant. It only can hold about 10 people, but it's the best food I've ever met, eaten from Italian in such small little rustic restaurants. That's what I'm talking about. We can't be spending this kind of money to bring people to put in the hotels, and our people can't advertise there when the regulation provides for it.
Mr. Chairman, through you to the member, that is part of the law, as you have just stated. There's a provision by the hotel inspection team that when they do the inspection for their license on a yearly basis, that it must be in the property. And if it's not there, the license can be held.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask my good friend, the Minister for Tourism, to, and I guess through this medium it will reach, I would ask him, with his Director of Tourism sitting next to him, to insist that whichever inspector inspects the accommodation in the Eastern District, that they ensure it's done, because I'm going to check it. Because they are not doing their jobs if what you are telling me, my friend, is correct. And I don't doubt you one minute that they are required to see that it is there once a year, and there has been zip, and they do not allow anyone with brochures to set them up, nor do they allow anyone the 20 minutes that the law says that they are required to give them to pick up and to drop back off any customers as a result of advertisement there.
No, through the chair, thank the member for those comments and that statement. And I stated the policy earlier. If that's a specific issue, the director is here, and we've just made note of it. So I appreciate if you have a look up there and call me.
It's all of them. I think I called you about that. That's all and sundry, or one of them, not a one of them do anything. Anyway, we'll see. We'll see.
Member for Bontown West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, sir, I'm just trying to understand the process that for the hotel license. What do they go through in terms of getting those licenses done?
Through you, Chair, Mr. Chair, I'll ask the director just to walk the member through that.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, property owners or those pursuing short-term accommodations first have to make an application to the Department of Tourism. There's a fee based on the number of rooms at the property, and I have a brochure that I can happily share with you that outline the steps. Once the application is made to DOT, it is then entered into a queue whereby there are 3 agency inspections, one from the fire department, the other from the Department of Environmental Health and Department of Tourism. Once a property passes all 3 inspections, their application is then put before the hotel licensing board for review and approval. And once that approval is given, their hotel license is then released to them. So there is a 3-agency process.
Thank you, Director. Through you, Mr. Chairman, the hotel licensing board, who comprises of that in terms of the membership of that board?
Mr. Chairman, there are 4 private sector members, and the secretariat for the hotel licensing board is housed in the Department of Tourism on the product development team. And based on requests from the hotel licensing board, any of the 3 agencies can be called to monthly meetings to report in on various topics.
Thank you, again, Director. I was actually looking at the website, and I noticed that the very last time that, well, as per the website, that it was updated in terms of members of the hotel licensing board as the 21st of August 2006. So I was trying to determine if there was a listing somewhere so we can see who those members are.
Mr. Chairman, the current membership comprises of the CITA president, Mr. Bud Johnson, Mr. Carvin Forbes, and Mr. Kenneth Hides as private sector members, and myself as chairperson.
And through you, Mr. Chairman, were those appointments gazetted and went through the normal, because I think they had to be appointed by cabinet?
Yes, that would be correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Next question, through you, Mr. Chairman. I noticed in the budget for next year that the line item on the revenue side for hotel license have actually gone down from 2019 to 2020 in terms of revenue fees. And I noticed recent media reports came and I think passed in the room stock of 7,027. And it is my understanding that what they also charge on hotel license fees also dependent, I think $25 per room or something like that. So I was curious to find out why, with the record number of rooms now crossing 7,000, that in next year's budget that the amount of revenues for hotel license fees have actually decreased. And the exact number, sorry, I should have probably written that down, but I noticed it has gone down. So I was just curious as to what was driving the decrease in that revenue with more rooms. Actually, yeah, it's on page 335 of the planning estimates. It says the actual 12-month total for 2018 was 281,000. For 2019, it's forecasted for 303,000. But then I noticed it dropped down to 2020 to 269,000, and then 280,000 for 2021. And both numbers are actually below the 2019 number. So I was just curious as in terms of if they expected some license not to be renewed, or there would have been some decrease in the hotel license. Thanks.
What page?
Page 335 of the planning estimates. It's closer to the bottom under the title Hotel Licenses.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, currently we have a lot of property development committed. However, their delivery dates are undetermined. When we look at our forecast, yes, we've had growth in the home share area, Airbnb, VRBO. In terms of larger properties and the revenues from larger properties, we don't foresee any delivery in 2020. Potentially 21 with the new boutique hotel in Georgetown, the Curio Hilton, that's being built next to Dixie Cemetery on the almond tree site. Outside of that, we do not have any larger properties that would deliver in 2020 that would really bolster hotel license revenue. Home share, has been a success story, but the hotel licensing fees are really driven from the larger properties when it comes to the fees.
So through you, Mr. Chairman, why the decrease then, where both 2020 and 2021 is even less than what we made in 2018 and less than what we forecasted for 2019? I mean, I was trying to understand why there's a decrease.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, thank the member for the question. The answer is it's just a conservative estimate that was entered by the department when they looked at it. It's a $30,000 difference. I think they were erring on the side of caution.
Yeah, but 30,000 difference and $25 per room, it does add up. So I was just wondering if something has happened. Through you, Mr. Chairman, just out of curiosity, going back to the issue of licensing and trying to understand the regulation and the thought process that goes into it. And I think that's following on from an issue that my colleague raised from Georgetown Central raised earlier. Looking at the government statistics from 2010, the total amount of houses, well, the total amount of rental property was 11,130 in 2010, when we had a population of 55,036. And then by 2018, it increased to 13,136, but the population went up to 65,813. So in essence, the rental units increased by 2006, and the population went up by 10,777. Recognizing that the whole Airbnb issue has taken off, but also recognizing now that there is a shortage in terms of housing, in terms of people available, especially numbers that we have in work permits now. The question is, what is the thought process that goes through in terms of approving someone for Airbnb, and do they take into consideration that once a house goes into that segment, it now comes out of this pool, when in fact we may need that house to remain in a particular pool? Are those market considerations taken into force, especially since, bearing in mind that they do take that into consideration when they're licensing the buses? Do they apply the same thing for the Airbnb rooms?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, one of the statements that was made by the Premier when he made his contribution, he talked about the acknowledgement of the government that we have an issue with rents and housing on the island because of growth and balance. The preview of the Department of Tourism and the licensing aspect of that in a new industry, because the phenom of vacation sharing has just come upon us, as you well know. The signing of the memorandum and the understanding of growth has been approved and run through the department, but at this time there hasn't been a consideration once they meet the criteria. There hasn't been a consideration of limiting that amount.
So, well, in essence, then, knowing that we know this now, in terms that there is a housing shortage, will it be the government policy or the government plan to start looking into homes that are now moving into the Airbnb space as opposed to what is needed in the domestic population? Because what has basically happened is that by shrinking the room stock available for rental, we have actually decreased the supply, pushed the prices up, where some people have seen rental increase from 30 to 50%. And in the absence of having a proper rental law and a proper mortgage law in place, that has actually created certain economic hardships within the country. So if we can sit down and limit the amount of licenses that we issue for buses, I would think this is something that we need to look at when it comes down to accommodation or shelter, which is far more important than transportation.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, thank the member. I agree. I think that's the reason why the Premier, in his address and his remarks, identified it. And obviously the commitment was that it's going to be a global issue that it's going to be looked at, and that consideration and many others will try to be put into the mix to move forward with the issue of, as you identified, the housing shortage.
Mr. Chair.
Member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to ask the minister, do they do any analysis of the market before they enact a policy and the potential ripple effects on our local economy? And in this case, just to give you a little bit more information, the housing stock. Did you take any analysis of what your policy position would have done to the local housing stock before you implemented it?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the simple answer is the Department of Tourism and the Ministry of Tourism didn't take into account the housing stock when the Airbnb and the sharing phenom came online here in Cayman Islands.
Mr. Chair, through you, has the government been given any warning about housing stock before you guys change that policy by anybody?
Through you, Mr. Chair, ask the question again.
Was the government given any warning about the housing market before you made the policy decision in respect to the Airbnb?
I'm sorry, the warning meaning?
Meaning that there is any shortages as to how the effect of Airbnb could be on the housing market?
Well, a warning, if we had had a regional example that had this problem before, I think that would have been a flag for us, and we could have said we had a warning because this happened in Aruba. But I can say that we didn't have that kind of a flag raised, and we didn't see this in any other part of the region. What we saw was that this had been an unregulated area, and entrepreneurs, meaning homeowners, wanted to take advantage of it as it came online, and they started looking at it.
Through you, Mr. Chair, is this the same, do you take that approach with all policy decisions that you don't check the effects on the local market before making it? Or is there a protocol that your administration uses to, before making policy decisions, how it'll affect the locals?
I think it's a very good question, Mr. Chairman, that the member has raised. And I believe what he's talking about is the balance when policy is made of how it's going to affect other areas and a domino effect with it. So we have to accept that because housing has been needed because of the growth of the tourism industry and more beds coming online, if you do a 5-star property, for every room you're going to need 5 employees. Obviously there's going to be permits. It's going to be a housing issue. The Airbnb is one, and the vacation rental by owner, the sharing is another example of growth in that industry, which the domino effect is it's affected housing across, it's affected housing from a lower income standpoint, it's affected housing in the medium range, it's affected young families. So from a government perspective, and I can speak for the ministry, our constitutional responsibility is to grow a sector and to provide growth and income for the government itself. That was the responsibility and the constitutional direction that we moved on in monitoring, in normalizing, in regulating this industry. So I think the member is correct that with growth in one part of the industry, it's a domino that affects other parts of it.
Through you, Mr. Chair, your administration also has had a strong policy to increase the population and a high number of work permits. Did you not think that that would have a problem on the housing market as well as another policy of Airbnb? Did you guys had no analysis done on how it would affect us locally?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, we live in a free market, and when you provide opportunity, then you hope that people take advantage of looking at that sector of the housing market that has become a need.
Mr. Chair, just to wrap up on this, and I know that I don't want to be too political, but can the government say that, or the minister say, that they would take a different approach when implementing new strategies, whether they should do further economic analysis on what the potential ripple effects could be on the local market before they implement a policy? Because obviously we're accepting here today that with population growth, with the extreme numbers of work permits, with the policy for Airbnb, that has negatively affected the local market for availability of homes, availability of apartments, and the high cost of rent. So I'm asking you whether this administration will take on an approach to do analysis before they implement any policies so the Caymanian people are not negatively affected.
So through you, Mr. Chairman, what I'm trying to explain is that the responsibility of government is to create opportunity and to grow an economy, okay? I think you will admit that our economy is growing, opportunities are being provided, and you're absolutely correct. We have an overlap and need a balance, but what is going to come first? For you to need more housing, you have to grow the market. So the responsibility that we're talking about here in this line item is specific to growing and creating an opportunity in tourism, the second pillar, right? We accept, you accept, I accept that there is an issue with housing that has been a partly created issue because of growth in the tourism market. We make no apologies about growing tourism in the Cayman Islands. We're proud of it, we're doing well, we're leading the region, and we're creating opportunities. We have to balance now, absolutely correct. We have to look at the issues because of the growth that has to catch up.
Mr. Chair, can the minister say if he thinks it would, if there was a policy review before implementation, it could have helped prepare him for those negative effects, so you could have said, made decisions to say, okay, well, we think this review or analysis would say it will take away from the local market as well as other decisions like work permit numbers and the growth of the economy. Maybe you want to stimulate some apartments or the like before you implement this policy, because it could have this kind of effect. You see that preparing beforehand could potentially help you from the problem becoming a problem?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the more information that we could get to make a decision is universally accepted that that's the best way forward. But the reality of what happens is you have to grow revenue. How could if you didn't grow the business itself, there would be no need for balancing the housing that has been created. The need has been created because you grew the business.
Final questions.
On such a large item, Mr. Chairman, 18
We've
million.
been at it now for going on 40 minutes.
This one we just reached on this topic.
We've been at this for a while.
Quick question, through you, Mr. Chairman, to the Minister. One of the things I noticed about the tourism regulations, Section 5(2)(a), it says, for the general minimum requirement for the purpose of Section 15(d)(r)(a), no discrimination against any prospective guests on grounds of race, origin, political opinion, creed, or membership, or otherwise of any club or other organized body. The reason I raise that, Mr. Chairman, through you, is how does the government handle the complaints from locals now when they go to some properties on 7 Mile Beach and basically being given the atmosphere of you're not welcome here or you should leave, and we have seen enough posts on Facebook and everything else. I mean, how are those complaints dealt with? Because ultimately, all the beaches, as far as I'm aware, are still public, but we have people being basically chased away from some of these premises.
Mr. Chairman, any complaints received by the Department of Tourism is logged, and if it names a specific operator, the complaint is sent to that said operator for response and resolve. So DOT is a facilitator of ensuring that the complaint is escalated and also follows up that there has been an official response to the person that has complained. For visible, localized on social media complaints, I can share one example that I was personally involved in. There was a complaint and a detail of, and typically it's the beach chairs. That's the issue of not being a guest, but using the beach chairs in front of the property. And this person did post on Facebook, and I then alerted the general manager of the complaint. This happened on 3 different occasions. I then personally followed up that the person that complained about how they were treated received a response and the situation was resolved. So DOT is a facilitator to ensure that properties do handle any complaints that isn't seen as very in a positive light.
Thank you, Director. For just another question, through you, Mr. Chairman, to the Minister. In terms of training, one of the things that came out during the debate of the for the referendum was the issue that not many Caymanians were employed within the tourism stayover industry, and that they were more on the cruise side of the industry. The question is, what efforts then, or what measures is the ministry or the department taking to A, get more Caymanians employed in the stayover tourism industry, and B, what it is that they're doing with regards to training, and then C, I'm aware that there is a tourism school at UCCI, but the question is not how many kids are being graduated, but also how many of them after graduation are actually being placed or finding jobs within the stayover tourism industry.
So through you, Mr. Chairman, thank the member for the question. I will answer, and if the director has more she wants to add, I invite her to add when I'm finished. We're very proud of bringing young Caymanians especially into the industry. It's a challenge. The school, the hospitality school, was started by the speaker when he was the minister toward the end. It was in process. We grabbed it and continued it in a couple different ways. Number one, it's a partnership with private sector, with board members. Number two, it's a funding model that we make sure anybody that wants to go there has a full scholarship. So we take that barrier out of the way. And number three, it's a Shield and Gills certification program that takes you out of the classroom and into the field. And the reason it was designed that way and supported that way is because what we found was that once young people understood the industry and understood the opportunity, it was something that they were very interested in. You know, I think that all of our families wanted us to go to college, wanted us to look at different types of occupations, and the truth is that each one of those occupations are needed in tourism. You need the accounting process, you need human resources, you need the managers, you need all of the different types of skill sets that any business is going to need, which is not recognized by a lot of the Caymanian people. So that was very important as a first step. We have made a commitment, and I said this in my contribution, budget debate, that we have had a representation that there were a couple of the graduates that hadn't been placed. And we have reached out to find out if that is really the case, because that's unacceptable. We have young people who have got this certification, and we're going to make sure that they're placed. The second part of it is that UCCI offers a associate degree that they can move right into, because this hospitality school is on that campus, and then it also offers a bachelor at UCCI if they want to stay home. The program that we have done through scholarships with education and with the tourism scholarships is, from a tourism standpoint, pinpointed at the JW experience, which is Johnson & Wales, recognized in the top 4 hospitality schools globally. They have 4 campuses. We have a program where if you have a 3.5 grade point, you get a $15,000 scholarship. Combined with the tourism scholarship, that puts you in the $40,000 range, and that means that when you come home, you have no debt to repay for your college education. A 3.0 and above is a $10,000 scholarship, and 2.5 is a $5,000 scholarship. And the reason for that is it's the incentive that if you do a little better with your grades, you get a bigger scholarship. Quite a few of those young people have returned. We have them there at Miami campus and Providence campus now as well. And a couple of the hotels give scholarships to the same university. So that's a major push from the Department of Tourism and the ministry to get more involvement and Caymanian participation. The second part of your question was involvement. I think you had 2 parts to the question.
Sorry, no, I think it was based on the training, the placement of the training, and also on the whole was it? I think it was the and basically where they're being placed in terms of because one of the, we'll kind of backtrack a little bit. One of the issues that is of major concern to me is that just about every single hotel on island is 60% or more non-Caymanian, and that in itself is a serious challenge within the industry. And then the question is, what are we going to do to break into or get more Caymanians into that industry? And the reason why I'm raising this goes back to my experience as a former member of the Business Staff and Plan Board, where we struggle in some cases where we turn down permits for pool attendants and people at the door only to have the businesses come down to the board and complain. You know what I mean? So that for me is kind of issues when Caymanians can't even get jobs as pool attendant. That is a problem for me. I think that's a problem for all of us. Mm-hmm. And the question is, what is being done, especially to protect the entry-level jobs? because we still have one of the highest youth unemployment rates within the Caribbean, despite the economy doing as well as it is right now in terms of unemployment. That the highest unemployment is still amongst our young people, and it's those entry-level jobs which I and many others inside this house started out within the hotel business, and that's where we need to start to see what is being done to get more young Caymanians into that.
Okay. So what I just explained gives them the skill set for entry level from hospitality area. I think you know that there are a couple properties, one that was locally owned that was running 95% Caymanian employment. That was Comfort Suites. So it certainly can be done. We work on a daily basis with CITA. We work with the hotels themselves and talk about the number of Caymanians they have there, the needs that they have, and the need that we have as a country to introduce the young people into the industry. I believe that we're having success with it. I believe that there are more there now. And I can tell you that when Kimpton opened, it was another need for more people in the industry itself. So we're driving the rooms, and we're creating the opportunity, and we're providing the skill sets, and it's something that has to be nurtured and worked at. I think that the staff at the Department of Tourism, led by the director, have that as something that's top of mind, and every member at the department there is focused on making sure opportunities are available.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, and to the Minister.
I was going to ask if you could give way to the member for
I just have
Northside.
one. Is it okay, Mr. Miller, to this? Okay. So I'm going to close off on this, collapse this area.
Fair enough.
The challenge that I'm having, and kudos again to the Department of Tourism and the Ministry for bringing the tourists here and creating opportunities. What I have a problem reconciling is we have within our society jobs broken down between skilled and unskilled. And when you have jobs that are generally unskilled in every other country, that people can come straight off the street and do, but for whatever reason they can't get those jobs here because they need to have some special skill, like again going back to the issue of a pool attendant, where one particular hotel had a problem with us turning down a permit for that. That is the culture that needs to change, and I think it will require more than just the Department of Tourism and the Ministry of Tourism, but also the Labor Department and the CBC and the work in terms of starting to deal with these issues. Because, may I make a constructive suggestion? When you have permits within the tourism industry costing $375 a year, which is $1.02 a day in revenues for the government, it's not worth it. And then we have hundreds of people literally applying to the government for jobs to clean the streets, but yet they can't even get a job to wash the dishes in the hotel. That's a problem. And I don't think you need any special skill to be a dishwasher. And it is those jobs that until the hotel start breaking down, or we start breaking down those doors, that's where the problem is going to be. But you can't tell me Caymanians can pick up garbage in the street, but they can't get a job to either pick up garbage at the hotel or even wash dishes in the hotel. That's a problem. And I mean, at the end of the day, this isn't just something for your ministry. You're doing your job. But it goes back to the culture of enforcement, to making sure that our young people get the opportunities that they need.
Point taken.
Member for Northside.
Okay.
These will be our final questions, and then we're going to take the vote on this. And then take...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the Minister, what is the government's policy on trying to change the wage structure in the tourist industry, which in many cases, if you look at the ad in the paper, is below minimum wage?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the government, as you're well aware, has a minimum wage, and that is obviously implemented.
Will you accept the industry from the minimum wage?
No, I wanted to finish.
Okay.
The industry moved up into the minimum wage. I mean, let's be honest, that minimum wage was a boost for the lower echelon of the workers there. But the industry itself has a lot of high-paying jobs as you move up through the industry. And we have to not lose sight of what the tourism industry really is. We've just talked about hotels, but the tourism industry is the airline industry that come in here. It's airport authority. It's all of the other linkages that connect because of tourism. So the focus that the last member brought up and you're bringing up is the lower skilled jobs and the scale on that, which the Premier and the Minister responsible has already said the review is moving forward for the minimum wage part of it. And that's a government policy.
Yeah, you have removed the exemption for the hotel and service industry for not paying the $6 CI minimum wage?
That's what they pay. That's the country's minimum wage.
No, the country's minimum wage is $4 for that industry because they get gratuity, or $4.50, not $6.
No, the minimum wage is $6. They're allowed to identify GRAT as part of the $6.
I'm not in the industry,
That's-
but I need somebody to explain this scenario to me. When I graduated from high school in 1969, I had friends who went to work at Holiday Inn as waitresses and bartenders. They were making $8 CI, $7, $8 CI per hour. If I gave them $1 tip, they put $1 in their pocket. It was theirs. They earned it by the service that they gave to me. They didn't have to share it with anybody. A beer was $1. Mixed drink was $1.50. If I go to one of them hotels on 7 Mile Beach now, a beer is $8.50 up. Mixed drink is $10.50, $11 for bottom shelf and up. But we advertise for bartenders $4 US an hour, and they're allowed to make up gratuity for the $6. That tells me that there's something wrong where the industry and the wage has not catch up with inflation, because it's gone the wrong way.
So I will go back again to what the law is: a minimum wage of $6. The comment that a bartender would put the dollar in their pocket, very true. But a pool of gratuity is to protect everybody with the exception of the management that's working there. So the bar back is going to get something that he helped the bartender make. The line in the kitchen is going to get something. The dishwasher is going to get something. So that's how the pool separates out. The consideration that was given and input was one of the things that were happening with the lower paid people in the industry was that they couldn't get bank loans, they couldn't get verification of what they made. So by putting the $6 on a pay stub that they could verify to the bank, help them in their process of becoming whole.
So the minister would agree with me that the introduction of compulsory gratuities as a way to pay the other way to pay wages has had a negative effect on wages for people in the industry. Real wages, not wages plus gratuity.
I would agree with through you, Mr. Chairman, I agree with the member that part, the lower paid individuals that depend on the grats has had an effect with the actual minimum wage itself. I think everybody here would prefer that be higher.
All right, Mr. Chairman, just through you, just expanding on a question from the member for Northside concerning the bar prices, what's being charged then versus what's being now. Is there anything that the ministry or the department is doing to ensure that at least that the tourists who come here get value for money in that regard?
Yes, I think that if we look at what we have been able to accomplish, Our growth rate this year is going to wind up at over 10%. We're going to wind up at over 500,000 stayover. We're going to wind up with 2 new air routes coming in here, an increase from Heathrow, another airline coming in from JFK. So we are delivering on our promises. I think that the success that we're having shows that the pricing model is correct, because our repeat guests are over 50%, and that's a very high number for this region. So we're satisfying the guests that come. We're marketing in the right places to get new guests to enjoy the experience, and we're having growth and success with it.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I think the minister misunderstood the question. I know we will have a high repeat guest because a large part of our room stock is also condos, which those people do come back every year to visit their condos, so that will naturally give you a high. But I'm talking in terms of value for money, because one of the biggest complaints that we get from guests is that the prices are too high. And in particular, since the member from Northside had raised the issue about the drinks prices, and the reason why I raise it, Mr. Chairman, is under the tourism regulation, section F, it says also that bars on the premises to be furnished to reasonable standards of comfort and prices to commensurate with the portions of drinks sold and amenities provided. So this is something within the tourist regulation that speaks specifically to make sure that people aren't being ripped off at the bar. So I was trying to understand, or to better get an idea or feel, or the ministry or the department polices this or enforces that.
Mr. Chairman, the Department of Tourism has a very active promotional calendar. We have a range of 9 to 15 promotions each year, including specific promotions with the national airline, Cayman Airways. Our focus is raising the levels in summer and fall. So we offer destination deals, and that includes all categories of the sector: accommodations, restaurants, retail, attractions, activities. And this is our main focus for summer and fall promotions. Overall, in terms of pricing specifically for restaurants, it is not something that we actively inspect. A part of the inspections process that may overlay is when an accommodations property goes through the inspection process and has a food and beverage facility for which there's a liquor licensing process as well.
May I just closing this topic off then, Mr. Chairman, through you. I know the minister had mentioned concerning making changes to the tourism law. Well, since that is one of the things that's also inside the tourist regulations, I would suggest in terms of modernization, and while they're at the modernization process, also just to touch on section C that says operators to give all reasonable assistance in the promotion of such training schemes as the director may institute from time to time for the purpose of improving the skill and efficiency of staff generally. So there are a lot of things that the law does require that's not being done now, or not being from a practice standpoint. That's the reason why they need to get the law updated quickly.
Member for West Bay North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For years, we've heard the local musicians complain about getting their foot in the door. Up until last weekend at one of the major hotels, I went in to see a friend, and right there playing in the lobby is a non-Caymanian. No one who I knew from the music scene locally. We know we've had people come here on work permits, working in maybe the law firms or the accounting firms or whatever, and even time they're playing in the hotels, yet our local musicians who do just as good job and have a more local flavor that a lot of the tourists prefer or want to hear. Unlike other countries where you go to, when you go to Barbados, when you go to Trinidad, when you go to Jamaica, you see their nationalities in the lobbies and playing and so forth. Here, we don't get that. What is being done to ensure there's only our people that's in there trying to make a little piece of this pie? Our musicians, the local musicians.
So, through you, Mr. Chairman, thank the member for that. I want to point out that we have local musicians that play at the airport and play at the seaport. and they're part of a program that the government has had in place. They do an excellent job. We've all seen them. You're correct in your assessment of going to a property and don't see local representation. We're just making a note of that now to have a final review of the law itself and see how we can look at this, because we did not have that included, and I want to thank you for bringing that up.
And the last piece, Mr. Chairman, through you, and that is, have you all looked at this electronic online submitting of resumes or interviews? That the one that I keep hearing Caymanians complaining about is at the Ritz-Carlton. You have to look at this online thing. You have qualified people, and they're not getting a chance to even get an interview. These are people who have not only those locals who have gone through our hospitality thing here, but who have gone overseas. And having never done it myself, but listening to them, it is almost as if it's biased. And it's not only them, that's just the one that comes to mind right now. Can something be put in place that we are getting our fair shake or getting face to face with these people and so forth? Something has to be done, or people are not happy about getting their chances in these various establishments.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I can tell you that the councillor responsible for work has mentioned that as recently as our last caucus of some of the issues that they're having and the issues of pre-certification, pre-qualification, and looking at that. So I thank you again for mentioning that. I'm sure it'll come up some more in the debate.
Mr. Chairman, I really appreciate you giving me the chance. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Member for Northside.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the Minister, can the Minister say what is the government policy in promoting experienced and qualified Caymanians into management in the hotel industry?
The government policy? Is it immigration policy? So, through you, Mr. Chairman, thank the member. The policy from the ministry, as I've explained, is to do everything we can possibly do to make sure that not only the lower skilled jobs are made available and skill sets, but to make sure that all the way through the industry itself, that they're advertised in the proper way, that they're looked at with how the hiring is done, and obviously the immigration aspect of it is the oversight, and that's where the regulatory part lies. But from the standpoint of tourism, we clearly understand that there's no other person that can give Caymankind than a Caymanian.
Opportunity to give it. One last question. You mentioned your development program and people going on to Johnson and Wales. It seems rather strange that a Caymanian who goes on to Johnson and Wales, qualifies as a chef, I think also has a degree in hotel management. Because of the salary they're being offered at the hotel and the position they're being offered, they're better off going to work in a supermarket as a chef.
That's a statement. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, before you take the vote, in regards to music at hotels, it's a long time complaint. That's not a today thing. I think many of us over the years who sat in cabinet and was responsible for tourism, and others, of course, culture, had those complaints. And when we dig into it, when we go to the properties ourselves and try to find out what's going on. One of the things they came back with was quality of music and variety of music, and hotels which are guests are international. They look. We say within ourselves they want to hear Caribbean music. I believe that, and I believe that naturally because I'm a lover of Caribbean music. But not everybody wants that, and some their excuse has been that they haven't been able to get what they want in music. And I believe that we have to find a way to ensure that the balance is there in getting our local musicians in. We know we got some very, very good musicians in Cayman who understands, even read music and attempts to give the variety. They're still not getting this opportunity to perform. That's a fact. And so we have to find a way. And perhaps it's the same thing we had to do when local people were not getting into advertise for business, water sport operations, and it was only raid sales sports that were allowed in. We had to put our foot down, and we made regulations to ensure at least that our brochures were being seen. And so it is something that it is troubling, but quality of music was and perhaps still an issue with the hotels.
Mr. Chairman, sorry.
Before you move on, Mr. Chairman, I just make one observation. We sit in this house and elsewhere, and sometimes we get statistics we say are from government in regards to employment. And they say, well, there are no more, Caymanians are not being hired in the hotel industry. We do know that cruise industry take more or carry more Caymanians because they are not just workers, they are entrepreneurs, bus operators, bus owners, tour owners, boat owners in the cruise business. What a lot of time is not taken account of is the fact that today a tremendous amount of foreign nationals are married to Caymanians and are working in the tourism industry, in the hotels. No longer, my mother's gone. That age group is gone that worked in the hotel industry. You don't find them going up and down. You could see them ladies standing on the side of the road waiting on their ride because they worked in the hotel industry. They were the movers and shakers and cleaners in the hotel industry and condo industry. Today, as I said, we're not taking fact. In fact, I was told by one of my constituents, I don't care what you say. No Caymanians are there. And I said, well, they're married to a Caymanian. I don't care about that either. Oh, but we have to care because we can't tell people who to marry and who not to marry, and it's hardly a family in this country that is not touched by foreign nationals. And a lot of them on one side of the street is working in the hotel industry.
Mr. Chairman, sorry, I just wanted to echo on something that the member for West Bay West had said, which jogged my memory when he was speaking. When he was Premier Minister of Tourism, and I was a member of the Business Staff and Plan Board, I remember having discussions with him where he basically told me and other members to make sure that Caymanians are given a fair chance, given opportunities, and if need be, to crack the whip on some of these companies. That's through you, Mr. Chairman, to the current minister now. Have the minister issued any such directive to the work or the immigration board or whichever board that approves permits to basically say, well, the same position the member for West Bay West took when he was there to defend Caymanians, is this government doing anything similar in that regard?
Yeah. Through you, Mr. Chairman, as recently as the last caucus meeting, the discussion was with the council responsible for work, the issues that we have to make sure that Caymanians are protected. And I want to complete the statement by saying, when you look at opportunity and when you look at skill sets, the movement of Caymanians to the tourism industry, but specifically to cruise, is because that's where the most money can be made with the skill set. I love to talk about the example of Georgia and Dalmain and Front Street there, with the initiative and the ambition to have coconuts. Much needed. It was an opportunity, and both of those are doing extremely well.
Well, one of the things, just to clear that up, Mr. Chairman, through you, as a person who worked as a night auditor in the hotel industry to Safer College, and also as a product of a bartender who had 5 kids working a Holiday Inn and put all 5 to college, the money is still within the Silver tourism business and not with Caymanians holding sign looking for work on the waterfront.
I think we continue this discussion over the dinner time period, but so I'm going to put this thing to the vote. All in favor of DAT 15, tourism advisory, advertising activities, marketing, public relations, sales and promotions, $18,452,373 in 2020, and $19,160,162 in 2021. Standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. Seems a very convenient time and point for us to take the evening break. It is now 6:25. We are going to reconvene again at 7:10. So we take 45 minutes for dinner.